My name is Lynn Fausett, and I am the author of a recently published book called Crimes of Humanity. I want to tell you a short story. In 2002, a woman named Lena Fausett, a simple Liberian wife and mother, was tired of the war that plagued her country for over a decade. She was tired of the starvation it caused. She was tired of the living conditions it created. She was tired of living in fear. She was tired of death. She was tired of the mutilations. She was tired of the women and the little girls getting raped constantly all around her. She got an idea. She gathered together a bunch of other mothers, and they marched down to a vacant soccer field that was next to Charles Taylor, who was the president of the country. It was next to his place where he lived. And they decided that they were going to stand there and they were going to pray and they were going to protest until the war stopped. In her words, she says they were going to pray the devil back to hell. So, amid all of the rifle fire, amid this ongoing fighting all around them, under a blazing hot equatorial sun, and constant deluges of rain. Liberia gets about 200 annual inches of rainfall, so it rains all the time. They stood together in that field. They collected more wives, more sisters, more daughters, and till they were a pretty sizable group. They weren't funded by a shadow organization. They were not supported by an opposing military faction. The event wasn't catered, no catering. They weren't protected in any way. In fact, and it wasn't staged for the media. There was no media. I lived there, I know. They wore white t-shirts as a symbol for peace. And they prayed and they chanted and they sang and they stayed there till 6 o'clock every day, determined. As time wore on and the movement spread throughout the nation, they became this huge force, and they decided they needed more leverage. So they came up with the idea to go on a national sex strike. I know it sounds odd, but it worked. When they threatened their husbands and their sons and their lovers that they wouldn't lay down with them and have sex with them anymore until they laid down their weapons and they quit fighting, the war came to a quick end. And it wasn't long after that Charles Taylor stepped down from the presidential palace. It wasn't long after that he was exiled. It wasn't long after that before he was apprehended. It wasn't long after that before he landed where he is now, and he's on, excuse me, I'm a little nervous. He's on trial for crimes against humanity in the world court right now. So, what does that story have to do with us? What does that story have to do with you? It's simple. The peaceful overthrow of a corrupt government was brought down by one woman's idea. One woman's idea that she took action, where she acted upon. And she was eventually, last year, awarded one of the 3 Nobel Peace Prizes. Anyway, Lena didn't get the idea to protest and then think about it for a while. She didn't, discuss it with family and friends, and she didn't ponder it for, and think about all the things, the reasons why she couldn't do it. Ideas can be killed by thinking them to death. Ideas without action are no more than idle thoughts. They become daydreams. Action takes deliberate discipline of will, even force sometimes. Sometimes we have to force ourselves to do things that maybe we don't want to do. Maybe it's easier to watch the television, than it is to get up, close the door, and actually get to it. In writing, I've discovered that nothing gets it done but actually doing it. I can speak of this firsthand. I can think about writing. I can fantasize about the glamour of being a writer. The glamour of that, I can fantasize about being that 1% that actually makes money writing, and buying my ranch in Montana and buying an ugly old ratty sweater and wearing that around for the rest of my life, But until I get 1,000 words down that day that I can get to work on, editing and rewriting, it's all just a dream. I'm just loitering in my own life. And unless I follow through with the revised copy and I figure out how to get it published, again, I've accomplished nothing. When my books and stories get into the hands of readers and I get their comments back and their questions back, that's when I've actually accomplished something. When I've caused people to think in ways that they've never thought before, or caused them to view things differently, then I've done something. That's my motivation for writing, not the ugly sweater. I want to change the world. I want to make the world a better place. That's the motivation. Moving on. I didn't want to freeze up. I know you're thinking this is weird, but I didn't want to freeze. Anyway, the ideas that you have are worth the risk. Take the risk, jump in, stand up, weather the stares of all of the people that sit around you and say, maybe you shouldn't do it, maybe you should wait for a better time. Don't just talk about the great idea that inspiration dumped at your feet. You could kill it if you don't act. This is the best time of your life. There will never be another time like right now. To quote Arnold, do it. Creation takes place in the void. I love that quote by Stephen Paul, and I usually add to it, action takes place in the present. This brings to mind a concept I learned early on in writing when I was the editor of my college newspaper, and again as a freelance journalist, and again as the editor of a pretty large trade magazine. I found that while creating is an incredibly creative undertaking, it's also an incredibly disciplined one. Creativity without discipline is moot. It's worthless. So many people think that an idea is the end in and of itself. They think this idea, lands and plants itself and it grows and it reaps itself and it puts itself in the truck and it takes itself to market. It just doesn't happen that way. I would love it if ideas were able to self-perpetuate, but they don't. They take discipline, they take action. You have to act on them. On the surface, inspiration and discipline appear to contradict, but in truth, they're partners. The creative side is an aspect that I attribute to inspiration, wherever that inspiration comes from. And I love to write in those inspired moments. But most of the time, when I sit to write, I'm on deadline. And I'm not basking in the glow of this golden epiphany. Instead, well, that's where the discipline part comes in. Taking an idea from thought form and creating it into a reality is a disciplined endeavor. Sometimes it may even take years. A typical novel takes 3 years and up to 7 rewrites to produce. That's amazing, isn't it? 7 rewrites. Imagine doing that. You say you don't know the answers or even the right questions to ask. But I know this. I know that I can give my mind a problem to solve and it will do it if I keep after it. When I was a builder, the problem may have been something to do with subcontractor logistics or some part of the drawings not working. As a writer, it may be finding the right voice for a story or coming up with the right words for a time compression. But I know my mind will figure it out if I keep after it. One characteristic of a great idea is that it comes power-packed. It typically arrives gift-wrapped in enthusiasm, with loads of energy in its own power source. You can almost judge a great idea by the glow it throws off. However, Ideas do have a finite energy supply. They have to be recharged from time to time, kind of like your cell phone. Again, that's where discipline comes in. When I'm not feeling inspired, to stay on task, I found ways to prime the well of my creativity. To keep it charged, I like reading from one of the hundreds of books that I surround myself with, or I read something that I wrote, particularly my poetry. I don't know why, but like John Wooden, I enjoy poetry. When I read my own poetry, it jumpstarts my mind, sticks it into gear, and I can get going. You need to find those things that inspire you and keep them around you. It could be a quote, it could be a picture, it could be a song, it could be an activity, going out, shooting some hoops, whatever, but don't let your inspiration and enthusiasm for your idea go down to a single bar. Keep it peaked, keep it charged. Joyce Carol Oates, one of the more productive writers of our time, wrote that for every novel she produces, let's say a novel around 300 pages, she says that she writes 3,000 pages. So she writes 3,000 pages to get 300. That's her discipline. Writers write. That's what they do. So, you know, when she's not getting the straight dope from the muse above, she writes. And you can judge the worth of it by the outcome. You know, Ms. Oates has created one hell of a brand. We've witnessed this year what journalists are calling the Arab Spring, the toppling of corrupt and inept governments. Again, what does that have to do with you and I, except for possibly the protest Wall Street movement? It's that one person or a group of people believe that they can affect change. We watch that change spread from nation to nation and topple regime after regime. Ideas are infectious. You should share. You should share your ideas. After publishing Crimes of Humanity, readers have been coming to me and they want to know how I accomplished it. Many of them have told me that they too have been writing books, and a lot of them have brought their manuscripts to me for me to look over as if I know what I'm doing. And you know, I tell them that there's no longer a reason why any one of us can't publish. We live in the absolute best time in the history of the world. Look at the ease with which we live. I mean, think about this. How many of you this morning chopped wood and carried water? Right. See? We live in an age of digitization. I can't say it, but I know what it is. It's changed the whole publishing industry. You can blog. You can create an ebook. You can go the print-on-demand route. There's electronic books, Nook and Kindle. You can self-publish a traditional book with just a couple of $100 now. That's amazing. Any one of us can publish. The obstacles that were once in the way of publishing are gone. We live in a time where an average person can get their ideas on the other side of the globe with literally a push of the button. That's amazing. That's phenomenal. It's been estimated that as much as 75% of all of the books that have been published in the last several years have been published via one of these electronic means that I just mentioned. 75%. In the United States last year, there were over 1 million books published. 750,000 of those were published electronically in some form. Isn't that amazing? The publishing world is changing, and it's a good thing. Writing well requires knowledge of craft. Mechanical skills can be learned. You know, craft is, I think of writing sometimes as almost like learning mechanics, learning how to overhaul an engine. Anyone can do it. You can learn how to do that. Any one of us can learn how to do that. And the idea that you have may take some craft, or it may take an engineering skill. It may take, some medical knowledge, whatever, but you can acquire that knowledge. You can learn the skills that you need to learn to bring your idea to life. I think it was Aristotle who first said that a person never literally learns anything until they actually do it. Bringing an idea to life is like that. You learn as you go. Your idea may not be safe or certain, but experiencing the unknown is when we really live. At those times, that's when we're the most alive. My father asked me once how I gained the knowledge to be a downtown Los Angeles construction project manager. And I told him, I watched you as a kid. I watched you build apartment buildings and homes, and it seemed to me like you could do everything. And I thought, if you could do it, well, I could do it. And he started laughing at me, and he says, it seems to me that that apparently your false assumptions are the source of all your courage in life. But I think it's this way for everyone. Everyone who wants to bring an idea into being. Action starts with a belief that you have what it takes. And you do. The idea provides the power, you provide the action and the discipline. As a last thought, when in doubt, persist. You may worry that you're not talented enough, or that you can't find the money, or that you're not savvy enough, but these are the times when you need to rage. You need to literally do that Sheryl Crow thing of throwing punches in the air. Hopefully no one sees you, because the ideas like the ones that you have are the ones that shape the world that we live in. And the ideas that you have will shape the future. It's the ideas that you have that brought justice, that brought civility, that brought technology, that brought medical breakthroughs, that have increased our standards of living and prolonged our lifespans. Ideas like the ones you have been the seeds of every revolution. And none of it was easy. Remember Robert Frost, patron saint to all those people who would bring an idea to life. And I took the road less traveled by, and that made all the difference. Get your fears and doubts out of your way. Let your mind do its work. I find that if we're willing to be honest, willing to admit it, we usually already know what to do. We just need to do it. And while these concepts that I've talked about aren't new, I hope my time here works as a reminder that empowers you to take the actual physical steps to bring your idea into being. Make the phone call, send the email, put the tie on, find an investor. Do what it takes. And if it doesn't fly the first time, that's fine. Take what you learned and rework it and go out there and try it again. And if that doesn't work, go again, go again, go again. The only regret you'll ever have is not putting your thoughts and your ideas into action. When we get to the ends of our lives, it's not our daydreams that we remember. It's the things we actually did, the places we actually went that we talk about. These are some of the crown jewels of our life. They're the hours that we spend writing the business plan at the kitchen table, the scary pitch to an investor, stepping out on the tarmac of a far-off place and being met by total strangers. In the immortal words of Australian poet Banjo Patterson, time mooches on. Get on it. Get going. Thank you.